Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Frederick Winsness, and I want to welcome everyone to yet another NetHope Solution Center webinar. Today, we're pleased to present the second in the series of our No Loss Generation Technology Task Force webinars. And today, we're going to talk about empowering refugees through online entrepreneurship. Before we get underway, I would like to make sure we go over our normal housekeeping rules. We have turned on mute on entry, so everybody should be muted when you get into the room here, but please keep yourself muted until the Q&A session that we'll have towards the end of the webinar today. And we want to keep this interactive, so please line up your questions in the chat window, and we'll facilitate a discussion and question and answer session towards the end. We do have a couple polls underway today, so I encourage you to answer those polls on the screen, and we'll explain that as we go through. And as always, we are recording these sessions, and you should expect a follow-up email with pointers to the recording and the collateral and potential answers to questions that we have not been able to cover so far. So I'm very pleased to introduce Leila. Leila is with NetHope and leading our No Loss Generation Tech Task Force efforts. We also have Rachel Paul with Global Partnerships at Udemy. Kim Behrman is the Enterprise Development and Employment Officer at IRC. And Jody Madden is joining us from Western Union, where she's at the Senior Manager of Global Loyalty Development and Membership there. So I'm going to pass it on to Leila, and she'll take it from here.
Great. Good morning, and welcome to our second NLG Tech Task Force webinar. So I'll take a couple of minutes to provide an overview of the task force, as we now have a number of new members, and welcome to the new members. So briefly, NLG Tech Task Force was set up by NetHope and No Loss Generation Initiative. The main goal of the task force is to facilitate collaboration within the international development community and also between the NGO and tech sectors, with the focus on ICT-enabled evidence-based programs for refugee education. So it's about collaboration, NGOs working together, NGOs and private sector working together, and utilizing technology in an effective way to meet refugee education needs. Task Force is open to global and local NGOs, private sector companies, academic institutions, and host governments. So please feel free to share that with your network. We provide ongoing information exchange and opportunities to collaborate via these monthly webinars, and I'll be talking about the webinars in a minute. The website, toolkits, in-person convenings of conferences, and ultimately leading to project-based cross-sector collaborations. In terms of the webinars, they're meant to encourage collaborative information exchanges for NGOs and private sector companies to share program design, outcome frameworks, technology tools. Programs and solutions that are featured on these task force webinars are examples really meant to inspire ideas and new collaborations, and they're not endorsed by NLG. And then when it comes to webinar themes, this is where you play an important role in helping us select the themes that are really meeting your needs and your asks. Current theme came out of the NLG EdTech Summit. We're focusing on youth education, training, and livelihoods. On our last webinar, we heard that you're interested in hearing about teacher training and certification. We'll do the same poll that we did on our last webinar, and at this moment, we'll ask you just to take a minute to fill out this form. It's an interactive form, which you can fill out both in this window, the WebEx window, to let us know specifically who is attending this webinar, but also what you are interested in learning about next. Just as you're filling out the poll, what's coming up in May, we have webinars again on the same theme of youth education, training, and livelihoods. We have a presentation with the International Medical Corps and HP Foundation. We also have Coursera for Refugees that will be sharing their work with that they're doing with 20+ NGOs, and they will be co-presenting with Chiron. And for June, we're looking to have Microsoft share their resources for refugees portal. So again, it is really important to us to hear from you, to understand what you're looking to both learn about, what your needs are, and also what you're looking to share with the task force members.
This is Frederick. I just want to point out that I also placed a link to this same poll in the chat window. So if people are not able to finish this up, they can always go to that. And also, if you're on an iPad or you're not able to fill it out right on the screen there, you can use that link.
Great. Thank you, Frederick. In fact, I'll just go back and so we can get started with our featured topic for today. So today's webinar, as mentioned, is focused on youth education and training. In this webinar, Udemy, IRC, and Western Union will talk about ICT-enabled programs that are available to refugee youth and adolescents so they can learn and earn a dignified living. Specifically, Rachel, Kim, and Jody will share how youth can access Udemy's portfolio of courses, become instructors on Udemy platform and earn a living, and access also courses created by other refugees, like the example that will be shared on this call. So now it's my pleasure to invite Rachel, Kim, and Jody to talk about their work with refugees and also facilitate a Q&A at the end of their presentation. Rachel, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks.
Frederick, does Rachel have access to our slides?
She does. Let me, she's on slide 6 here, so I'm going to put it back to the first one, and I'll give Rachel control. So go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, and thank you for the introduction, Layla, and to the whole NetHope team for facilitating the webinar and giving us the opportunity to present our work. Thank you to Kim also from the IRC and Jody Madden from Western Union. They've both been instrumental in moving this project forward. So it's great to meet you all. I'm Rachel and I'm on the business development team at Udemy. And today I'll be talking to you about our Empowering Refugees Through Online Entrepreneurship initiative. It's a partnership that we have been working on with Western Union and the IRC. And more broadly, the topic's really about job training for the future and how we can leverage technology. We all recognize that technology is changing very quickly and that I think especially in the US, the conversation is very focused on how automation is destroying jobs, how machines will be able to perform half of US jobs in the next 2 decades. And so we consistently see headlines around, robots taking over our jobs. Is there a lot of validity to these headlines? And more of that apocalyptic view. But there's also really the opportunistic side, which indicates that there's a big opportunity for technology to create new employment opportunities. The World Economic Forum actually published a study not too long ago saying that 65% of children today will work in jobs that don't exist today. And so we know that the workforce is rapidly changing and we need to prepare people with the proper skills, both hard and soft skills, that really will address the challenges that they face and increase their skill set. Another study here is showing that the number of skill sets that will be needed in the workforce is going to increase by 5 times. Both of these hard and soft skill sets, how do we train people to be prepared if they're not going to maintain just one job throughout their lives? So what does this landscape really look like here? So now I'll talk to you more about Udemy. Udemy is, the original name came from the Academy of You. It's an open global marketplace whose mission is to improve lives through learning. Now, we believe that anyone looking to learn a new skill or improve existing ones should always be able to find the right teacher. But at the same time, we know that not all great teachers are found in the classroom, the traditional classroom. And that's why our platform actually allows anyone to develop a course and share their knowledge. It's an on-demand video-based platform founded in 2010. There's actually now over 45,000 on-demand video courses. They range in length from 30 minutes to 20+ hours, and it's a mix of free and paid content ranging in very different topics, from professional categories like web development to more personal categories like yoga and meditation. All the courses come with lifetime access. They're mobile friendly, downloadable, and offline viewing. So you don't need to be necessarily connected to be watching any of the videos. 15 million students are currently utilizing the platform, and it's actually localized in 12 different languages, but content is available in 80 different languages. It's very international, available in over 190 countries, and we find that about 60% of the revenue from paid courses comes from professional development categories versus personal, and web development is really a top category. With this marketplace model and access for anyone to publish a course, we find very fresh content. There's about 1,000 new courses published each month from different instructors on the platform. So you'll see here, these are some examples of free courses. I'm going to scroll through here. There's over 2,000 free courses on the platform, ranging in all different topics. I think this one will, oh, nope. Here's an example of a free PMP course in Arabic, a 2-hour on-demand course here available. So back in 2016, we actually partnered with the Western Union and IRC to put forward a pledge in response to President Obama's call to action to help with the global refugee crisis, and really to leverage the Udemy platform to create economic empowerment opportunities, having refugees become course instructors and deliver educational content. And so for this project, actually, 100% of the revenue from the paid courses that any refugees make will be 100% kept by them, and we'll be paying instructors through Western Union's Quick Cash, so there won't be any payment issues there. And the point here really is, with the open platform, we know that many refugees come with a whole wide range of fantastic skill sets, and they have a lot of experience themselves teaching on many different topics. And there is a big upfront lift in terms of creating the course, and Kim will definitely go into the whole process, because actually the IRC was involved in making the course on the ground. But once the course is published, it can be a sort of a passive income stream for refugees who might not have access to work visas and different work opportunities. So to dive more into this program, the idea, again, is to build a pipeline of potential instructors and really utilize the platform for this passive income stream, and then also leveraging that existing free course content. And in addition to the free course content, there are paid courses, and they are actually really affordable. The courses are priced between $20 and $200, and they're often discounted down to $10 US. So again, wanting to leverage the platform for the instructor piece, but then also the existing content and potential trainings that are available. So for this particular example here, we have, thus far we've worked with the IRC and Western Union to create a course called Practical Plumbing with Safa Sukaraya, and it'll be published by the end of this week. While still in its early stages, with the help of the IRC, about 17 total participants came together to create this course between the English subtitling, video production, and editing. And so I'll show you the course. Is it this one? Live here. So it's still in draft mode. We're just uploading one last video, but you can see here, this is really her, Safa tells her story of how she became a plumber actually after her move to Jordan. And she got a grant from the IRC to take courses and actually started her own business. And she talks about her story in the course, in addition to actually practical plumbing skills, how to fix a clogged sink. So she goes into the whole process of actually fixing the sink and really building practical skills. Going back here, so it's great to have all of you on the line here listening to this and being involved and on the ground primarily. So, I think the next question is around how to get involved. And we'd really love your help with building a pipeline of potential instructors. We've worked with the IRC and Western Union to identify some folks, but again, it's a completely open platform, and we have resources available on the whole course creation process. And I think, at the outset, the necessary skills really are sort of around teaching experience and at least involving potentially an intermediary company for some of the, video editing and production process. I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, which I know Kim will also dive into in terms of creating that course with SAFA. And then on the other side is really leveraging some of the existing free and paid course content for skill building, and even using the platform to create training materials. They are available on mobile, on desktop, and with lifetime access. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of actually building that curriculum and having access to skills training. And I think I'll give it over to Kim and potentially Jody also from Western Union to pop in.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so I'm going to just talk a little bit more about the IRC and Jordan and a little bit of background onto how we got to this partnership with Western Union and Udemy, just to give a little bit more context. IRC has been working in Jordan since 2007 and responding to the Syrian crisis since 2012. And we really work across sectors and across both camp and urban environments. And so we're working in health, providing primary healthcare and reproductive healthcare services. Our protection programming has quite a bit of a focus on youth, so we provide child protection, case management, family reunification for youth in camps, as well as a really robust women's protection and empowerment program. And so the economic well-being program really stemmed from that women's program. And we have women's centers in Mafraq and Irbid, where people can be referred to services to respond to gender-based violence, as well as get livelihoods services as well. And so our livelihoods programming, and this is the team that I sit on, provides a combination of services. And so we do cash assistance and cash for work for those who are most vulnerable, as well as providing employability training and life skills training to help prepare people for the job market. We also do entrepreneurship training and helping people launch their own businesses or expand existing businesses. And to support with that, we couple this with startup grants, so people have access to capital, which is a really critical challenge for many entrepreneurs and refugees. And then finally, we've also started a small-scale urban agriculture training program as well. So we know that our economic programming works, and we know that people have been able to earn income and assets through the programs that we've established. But in response to the Supporting Syria and the Region Conference last year in February, governments came together, and the government of Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey really made formal commitments to respond to the Syrian crisis, not only from a humanitarian perspective, but also from a development perspective. And much of their formal commitments were around employment. And so the government of Jordan, for example, through the Jordan Compact, really committed to making work permits more easily accessible for refugees and for job creation for refugees. And so inspired by this, IRC launched the Million Jobs Initiative. David Miliband, IRC's president, sort of made a public statement that said, we need 1 million jobs for Syrian refugees. And so in response to this, the Economic Recovery and Development Program collaborated with our Research and Development Unit. And the goal of this project was really to develop long-term solutions to quickly generate employment for displaced populations. So we know that our programming, skills training, and business grants work, but it's really hard to create, hundreds of thousands of jobs very quickly through these. And so we wanted to look at what are new and innovative approaches for really scaling employment. And the idea for Million Jobs was to start in Jordan and to hopefully identify a portfolio of solutions, not just one key solution, that could potentially be replicated elsewhere in other displacement contexts. So as part of Million Jobs, we hosted a blue ribbon panel last July, and we really brought together lots of leaders from the private sector, including Western Union, to talk about what businesses can bring to the table to sort of help scale this challenge and help solve this challenge. And so after this meeting, we launched a partnership with Western Union to see if we could test some innovative solutions on business process outsourcing. So that's sort of the background, and now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on what this rapid prototype looks like. So together with Western Union, we decided to conduct a very small-scale testing of outsourced tasks to refugees and Jordanians. And so the idea here is multinational companies like Western Union have lots of different tasks that they typically outsource to contractors. And instead of doing this business process outsourcing to regular contractors, the idea was that we would test it with our community, with refugees and Jordanians, which is also called impact sourcing. So the idea here, we really just wanted to test to see, do refugees have the skills to complete these tasks? Can they do it well, and are they interested in it? And does the quality work for Western Union? Does it really work for both sides? We decided to do this at a really small scale just to ask these initial questions. So we called this sort of a rapid prototype. It's not even really a pilot. But we learned quite a bit through this rapid testing and are really excited with some of the findings that we were able to identify. So to source the participants for this, we worked through IRC's existing programs. So we have quite a strong relationship with the community through our women's centers and the services that we provide. And so we worked with 17 people in total, a mix of men and women and a mix of Jordanians and Syrians. And we were looking for people who had some familiarity with computer skills. And so there were two main categories of tasks that we used. The first were computer-based tasks. So these were from Western Union, and they included a variety of different sort of website and Excel tasks. So collation of translation, website audit, so for example, clicking on links to make sure websites were functional, or ensuring that information on websites was accurately portrayed and then noting that in a spreadsheet. So those were the computer-based tasks. We also did two non-computer-based tasks. So the first was a stock photo shoot, and the photo that you see here was one of the photos from that task. Western Union typically can hire an outside photographer contracted to do this work, but we worked with a refugee to do this. And then, of course, as Rachel mentioned, the partnership with Udemy to do a how-to course on plumbing. And so those were the tasks that we quickly tested with the group of participants. Okay, and so we learned quite a bit in the process. Overall, it was definitely a positive learning experience, although there were some challenges that we're definitely interested in addressing moving forward. So first, participants requested a little bit more training and continued support in the process of completing these tasks. So while we found that people did have good skill sets to complete the computer tasks, they were relatively comfortable with Excel, they could navigate the internet well, participants requested just more robust orientation to how to do the tasks. We also found that it was really helpful to have somebody from IRC stay in the room as people completed these tasks. This was especially important because technological difficulties were unfortunately common. We lost electricity or lost internet access, which is not too unusual in the context that this was happening in, but it did cause some frustrations as people lost work that they were doing. And so that was something that we had to tackle. So it was helpful to have some IRC support in the room. Perhaps obvious, but participants clearly need access to equipment in order to complete these tasks. So IRC for this small pilot or prototype was able to provide both computers and internet and physical office space to complete the tasks. And for the photo shoot and for the Udemy video, we actually worked with a participant who previously worked as a director and a photographer when he lived in Syria. And so he had access to a camera. And so that was really important for being able to complete that task. Another challenge was language skills, and this came across really in two key ways. First, just making sure that we have the proper translation available to really explain the tasks. This is related to, really making sure that the orientation for the task is included in the training. And then also with the video, one of the challenges that we found was that we had to translate Safa's course, and so finding somebody who could accurately translate it and then also include subtitles on the video for that production was a little bit of a challenge for us. But overall, we had both IRC evaluate the task completion as well as Western Union, and then we also did follow-up surveys with each of the participants, and we found that the quality of the tasks completed was high and satisfactory for Western Union and for Udemy, which was really exciting. And also that participants really enjoyed it. Most of the participants that we spoke to were interested in doing some of these tasks again and wanted to learn about more opportunities. And so that was really encouraging, especially because some of them faced some technological difficulties. So we were really excited by that. Moving forward, though, and we are interested in pursuing funding for this and doing a larger pilot, working with a larger group of people. There are a few key considerations that we're thinking about as we move forward. So the first is really securing demand. So Western Union and Udemy provided excellent tasks for us, but if this is to become a really sustainable source of income and livelihoods for people, we need to make sure we have lots of different private sector partners who can provide a variety of tasks for a variety of skill sets in order for it to be more continuous. So one of the things that we're really looking for is to source not only other multinational private sector partners, but also look for partners within Jordan or within other countries. The second thing, as I mentioned earlier, is really to include a comprehensive training and orientation to the tasks. So we know that people can do these, but we want to make sure that people have the right amount of support in completing the tasks. And one of the things that is really important is managing the relationship between participants and the company that's requesting the tasks. And so we think that moving forward, any pilot would really require an intermediary organization to manage that relationship. So for this program, IRC acted as that intermediary, but moving forward, that could be another partner. So, for example, SamaSource is a managed service business process outsourcing company, and they work with people in low-income communities around the world and help train them and match them to tasks. And so we're working with them to potentially develop a pilot to move forward. They're really experts in managing that relationship and managing the task flow from company to participant. And so that's something that we're thinking about a lot. Next, so Western Union developed some general timeline guidelines for task completion for how long they should take, which was really helpful. But given some of the technology challenges that we face, we might want to consider extending those time limitations for the particular context that we're working in. And then finally, and this is really critical not only in Jordan but around the world, is really understanding the legal policy framework for refugees. So refugees in Jordan, for example, can access a work permit, but only in specific sectors. And so it's not quite clear if freelance work or if this type of business process outsourcing work could be linked to a work permit, and so that's something, the policy is really dynamic and shifting quite a bit, and so we are in the process of sort of understanding a little bit more what those implications might be for this type of work moving forward. Yeah, so that's really a quick run through of how the project went. We're really excited to get Safa's course online and have this be sort of a source of income for her moving forward. I should mention that for the computer-based tasks as well, all participants were paid for their work at market rate. And so that's certainly a component of the project. That's it.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel and Kim, and also Jody from Western Union is on this webinar too, and looking forward to the questions. Before we move into the Q&A portion of this webinar, just wanted to, and Frederick, if you don't mind flipping back to the last slide, just in the summary in terms of the topics that we covered today as you're thinking about your questions. Benefits for youth and adolescents, as Rachel and Kim shared, include access to Udemy's portfolio of courses. Do know that we posted a list of free Udemy courses on NLG Tech Task Force website, and we'll also include that link in the recap email. So you could be, for those of you who are working directly with refugee youth and adolescents, you can start accessing those courses today. Youth can also become, and adolescents can become instructors in Udemy platform and earn a living, and also access courses that are created by other refugees, like the example that Rachel and Kim shared. So now I'll turn it over to Frederick to moderate the Q&A. There are a number of great questions that have come in. We do have quite a bit of time, so feel free to post additional questions in the chat window.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for great information. I wonder if I'm just to ask Jody to say a few words. I think she might want to address a little bit the role of Western Union here. Go ahead, Jody.
Sure, thank you, Frederick. So hi, everybody. I'm Jody Madden, and I think a few of you might have been thinking throughout this presentation, what has Western Union got to do with all of this? We're not a freelance agency. My job is actually in loyalty and CRM, so where do we kind of come in? And I think this started for us quite a long time ago, where our CEO actually went and spent time on the ground in refugee camps in Greece. He's a migrant from Turkey himself, so it's a very personal issue. But also for Western Union, our main revenue source is ultimately people successfully migrating into markets and sending money back home. So ensuring that people can kind of successfully migrate, get educated, get jobs, it's also kind of our bread and butter, as well as something that we're personally passionate about at Western Union. So we've basically looked at what the breadth of our business and kind of the assets we have here and how we can potentially flex those. So we have a kind of plethora of initiatives, some of which are more obvious, things like discounted transactions, getting Western Union locations into refugee camps, and some which are leveraging the kind of non-payment side of our business, which this pilot fits into. So I'm very happy to be kind of on the working group at Western Union, and we're always really excited and passionate about any new opportunity we can get involved in and how we can support other opportunities too with our kind of cash payout system. So do feel free to get in touch with me if you think there are any synergies there. We're always open to new things.
Jody, since we have your attention right now, there was one question. It was in the middle of this series of questions, and we'll get back to everyone's questions in a second. But one question was, what is Western Union's role? And if I can just, my observation of what I heard was that you provide a work task or task opportunities for a task to be provided in the refugee camps by people there. And you also, in partnership with Udemy, you provide no-fee cash transfers for these courseware that is being hosted on Udemy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So on the latter piece around payments, we know that having a bank account can actually be a real barrier for a lot of refugees who don't necessarily have one yet in the country that they're in. So by leveraging cash payout at location, it removes that barrier. Ultimately, all we need is someone's name and roughly where they are, and they just head into any location with their ID and we can pay them. So that was critical for the Udemy piece to make sure that these people could get paid. But outside of that, yeah, we did provide jobs, so we're kind of leveraging the amount of freelance work we have here, but also just as kind of a think tank. I think the initial idea of this whole piece kind of came out of some of those workshops that Kim mentioned, and it really was a joint effort between Western Union and the IRC to identifying the actual opportunity, and then we also assisted in funding for the pilot as well. So kind of across the board.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. The first question that came in is probably for Rachel, and the question was, how do you suggest that NGOs and education organizations introduce these resources to students and teachers / instructors?
Sure, just in terms of making it known that these are available or actually sort of operationalizing.
Both. I think it's the awareness is what it was hinted at here.
Yeah. So I think for the folks on this webinar who are really on the ground, I mean, really would love the support on that. Just in terms of the availability of having the free trainings and the platform to even create additional trainings, kind of relying on folks who are on the ground and in touch with the people who need the trainings. I mean, from our perspective, we do have, about 15 million users around the world that are constantly trying to, make our trainings available for others across the world, and consistently trying to also localize the platform in different languages, make local currency available as well. And then, yeah, in terms of operationalizing, I think in areas where there's not as much connectivity, making sure to actually download the courses ahead of time for offline viewing. And there's also a capability to actually put the courses in a lower quality. So there's different video and audio quality metrics within the course itself, all the courses. So, downloading the courses at a lower resolution, for example, would make it faster, more readily accessible. So in terms of the operational perspective, I think, yeah, just taking the opportunity to actually, download the courses ahead of time for offline viewing in areas where there isn't as much connectivity.
Great. And since we have your attention here, there was another quick question on the revenue stream. Does any of the dollars go to Udemy?
Yeah, so for the purposes of this particular project, actually 100% of the revenue will go to the refugee instructor. This is definitely abnormal, or it's not typical of our usual revenue stream for instructors. It can be a bit complicated, but essentially the way that the business model works on the back end is typically our normal instructors would receive, let's say, 50-50 for organic purchases. If someone just came to the Udemy website, it would be 50-50. If Udemy were to run a paid ad on Facebook, it would be like 25% to the instructor. And there are different scenario cases where the revenue splits would differ. But for the purposes of this project, it would be 100% going to the instructor. We will be paying them through Western Union's Quick Cash. So, you know, they don't need to have a PayPal account. The payment will be very easily made and be once monthly. And so essentially I will be going in, calculating the payment that is owed based on the number of purchases and the price point that's paid, and then making the quick cash payment to the instructor directly.
And just to add to that, sorry, Frederick, this is Jody again. Like obviously, as kind of all the private sector friends we have on the phone will know, like having a revenue generating part of these initiatives is something that is actually a good thing because it makes them sustainable in the long term. And one of the pieces that that I like about this is, whilst you know we don't make any, neither of us, myself, Western Union or Udemy, you know, necessarily make any profit about this course, I think actually it brings kind of that next generation of millennial, socially conscious users into both of our platforms, into the Udemy suite, people who potentially have never taken a course before and might actually take another one, and also, you know, raising awareness of Western Union as a payments provider too. So whilst not directly, I think there is indirect revenue benefits from this, which is important.
There was a follow-up question on that came in privately to me, said that how could people contact Udemy to explore opportunities in the field? Somebody, Claudia, suggested that it could be very useful in Colombia, in the zones where they are dealing with the peace process.
Absolutely, yeah. So I just, I had my contact info on my slide, but I just actually put it in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me directly with any inquiries or opportunities. Would love to continue the conversation and partner. Fantastic,
and we'll make sure that that contact information is also in the follow-up email that goes out later on today or tomorrow. So there was a question that came in from Rich. What are the regional demographics of the instructors, like urban versus refugee camp? He's curious as to which refugees might have become instructors.
So I can respond quickly to this. This is Kim. So I mean, at least for the purposes of this project, we did not do this in a refugee camp. The vast majority of refugees in Jordan, you know, 80 to 90%, are actually living in urban areas. And so Safa, for example, who is an instructor on this course, I believe lives in Masraf, which is a city about 6 kilometers from the Syrian border. And the other participants who completed the Western Union tasks were from either Masraf or Irbid, which is another city near the border. So that was just for the purposes of this project, but Rachel can certainly speak to other Udemy courses.
Yeah, so this is the first one. The project, I think, is still very much in its early stages. So this was the first course that's been published. We've been in other conversations thanks to some of Jody's connections, Jody from Western Union's connections, with some folks actually in Greece, and they've just moved to Belgium. So that's a separate course that's in early stages right now. But again, kind of looking for different folks who can connect us to refugees who would be interested in making courses and who would have potential skill sets to share, and also access to that sort of intermediary company who would be able to help on the ground in terms of the necessary tools.
Excellent, thank you. Next question on the list is, what does it take for anyone to create skills training on Udemy, like teacher training?
Yeah, so the platform is very open just in terms of we do really allow anyone to create a course, and there are just basic audio and visual quality metrics that we have. So for example, the video needs to be shot in a certain video resolution, and it needs to be 30 minutes in length. The video course has to be 30 minutes in length. So there are certain basic sort of quality metrics that we have, but in terms of the content and language, it really can be virtually anything. Of course, we have a trust and safety team that regulates, moderates the platform for any sort of inappropriate content that would be removed or any inappropriate behavior on the content towards students. But other than that, I mean, it is a very open platform in terms of accessibility and really having anyone be able to create the course. And we rely on users actually to generate the reviews and sort of moderate as many marketplaces do. So any, again, towards the inappropriate content that would be removed. And then, you know, in terms of courses kind of surfacing to the top in our like back-end algorithm, it's really based on user reviews and comments. So there's just, yeah, the basic, I think, you know, 30-minute video requirement, and we encourage instructors to create educational activities within their course, but it's very open in that anyone can kind of make a course on what it's like.
If I may add, I think this is an important topic. As I mentioned earlier, teacher training is one of the pain points that this group has identified in our past conversations. And what's interesting about what you're sharing, Rachel, is a potential platform for teacher training, instructor training to be shared, to be published and shared more broadly. Is that correct? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely a platform that could be, because again, it's open access. The instructor has complete control over the price and length of the course and all of that. So in terms of creating trainings, it's really this open platform that's made explicitly for online learning, online training. So definitely available for that purpose. Thank you.
Rachel, is there a free course that is an instruction on how to become an instructor?
There are several free courses actually made by our official instructor design team and made by learning science experts. And so we have about 5 courses, each dives into sort of the content or curriculum development, one on the audio and visual quality, creating activities and exercises for your course for students. So yes, there are definitely free courses available for that. I can actually pull them up and provide a link in the chat.
Great, thank you. There was a question that came in around how IRC and other NGOs expose job opportunities to applicants. So one thing is the training, the other is then to get in to some livelihood or some job. How do people discover job opportunities?
Sure. So in Jordan, a lot of our job opportunities, it's done through our women's centers. And so elsewhere in Lebanon, for example, and inside Syria, we call them livelihood centers, but it's essentially like a one-stop shop where people can come in for services and get services depending on their particular needs. So for example, the most vulnerable might be eligible for cash assistance, while those who are a little bit more stable might be interested in conducting some training and then being connected to jobs. And so by running this through our community centers, IRC can directly work with beneficiaries to come up with livelihood solutions that are relevant to them. But for example, in Jordan, we have apprenticeship programming and job placement programming where we can connect with local private sector partners for both on-the-job training and jobs as well. So yeah, so a lot of it is done through our centers and through referrals from either other organizations or other IRC sector programming.
Kim, are you at all also using the web platform for, there's been some discussion about job marketplaces and things like that online. Do you leverage that, or is it more a local going through your women's centers or your refugee kind of locations?
Yeah, so as part of this Million Jobs initiative, we're looking to expand that to the platform idea to really connect people with jobs through a platform. It hasn't yet been launched. So to date, we've been doing this more at a local level, but it's certainly something that's on our radar and something that we're looking to explore. And this partnership with Western Union and Udemy was one example of us trying, a new model of employment that could potentially leverage online work. We're also currently working with the Overseas Development Institute in the UK and conducting some research on the gig economy in Jordan. And we're looking specifically at the feasibility of the gig economy for women refugees who face really exceptional barriers to accessing the workforce. And so that's something that we're looking into as
well. Excellent. So there was another question that came in. We understand that what you were describing was things that are happening in urban areas, but has there been consideration for applying the IRC business process outsourcing model to refugees in the camps?
Yeah, so when we were designing what this prototype would look like, we thought about this, but the internet connection, particularly in Zatari and elsewhere, is a real challenge, and so that's part of the reason why we chose to work in urban areas, but also, at least in Jordan, all of our employment programming is really happening in urban areas in the northern governance as well as Amman. And so that's where we chose to sort of start this. We're not opposed to potentially exploring camps in the future, but given where refugees are living mostly and where employment needs are, we chose to prioritize first urban areas.
Yes, related to that was a question that just came in about what are you finding are the requirements for an online training to be successful in refugee settings? You mentioned connectivity. Do you need to have a computer lab? Do people have their own resources like mobile phones? Do mentors help, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so we incorporate mentoring as a really critical component to our livelihoods work, and we know that when people have access to mentors, their businesses are typically more successful, for example, and that additional support is really helpful. All of our employment training and our entrepreneurship training right now is delivered in person. We're actually adapting our curriculum to be delivered on tablets in some other contexts, in Cote d'Ivoire, for example, but we haven't yet brought that to Jordan, for example, or the Syrian context. So yeah, I mean, in order for online training to be successful, definitely connectivity is critical. Equipment is critical. So while most refugees do have access to mobile phones, access to laptops or tablets, for example, is much less prevalent. So thinking about this is actually something that's included in our gig economy research with ODI. So we're excited to learn a little bit more about that. But yeah, to date, we have not done our employment training online yet.
Excellent, thank you. We do have a couple more questions, and we're going to go through those over the next few minutes we have. But while we're doing that, I'm going to activate the webinar satisfaction poll here. So I'd really appreciate people filling this in as well. We'd love to get feedback on these sessions so we can improve them over time. So I'll leave this open, and you can fill them in as we finish up the Q&A here. So Rich had another question. Has Udemy established partnerships with academic institutions? Can students use the completion of Udemy courses as evidence towards the equivalence of a GED? Related to that might be assessment or certification of teachers, for instance. What would you do in this area?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Rich. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so the Udemy model is a bit different in terms of if you would compare it to Coursera, for example, who is partnering directly with universities. It is an open marketplace model, which actually allows the opportunity for refugees to create courses and not sort of have that publisher barrier. But in terms of the certification piece, it really is a skills-based training platform. And so we do offer a certificate of completion, but there is no formal certification or assessment tied to it. It's really more about users being able to come in and learn very specific skill sets. A lot of times users will come in and let's say there's a 20-hour Excel course, but they really just want to learn pivot tables. You know, they might not even finish the whole course. They might just take the couple hours of lectures on pivot tables and learn that skill. So it's kind of a different model, not partnering directly with universities for the content. It's really sort of everyday experts who have in the field, on the job type of experience and are sharing their knowledge. So at this time, no certification. We have been doing some tests around sort of practice tests. We've partnered with Amazon on their AWS, for example, and some Cisco trainings. So those are sort of, we partner with the actual companies on that. So it's an Amazon certified course for that, and we're trying to build out that program with these practice tests, but other courses do not have, they just come with a certificate of completion and no official certification.
So maybe the content that people are accessing and the skills they're building, the skills that just build towards being certified elsewhere. There's plenty of resources to do assessment testing and get that certification. But here's at least content that people can use in order to build skills towards those certifications and tests.
Yes.
Great. We did have, you brought up some regulatory issues. I think it was Kim that brought up regulatory issues, and I thought that was quite interesting. So how would, when people start making money in these situations, how do you take, they take part in the formal economy in terms of paying taxes or what have you? Is that a concern you're dealing with?
That's a good question. I think our biggest concern is ensuring, like, work permits we know has been a real challenge in these contexts, but if people are linked to formal jobs, then a lot of those responsibilities are linked to the employer as well, and so it's a little bit outside of IRC, like we wouldn't support necessarily with the actual like issuing of a work permit. That's done with the government and with the employer itself. And so similarly with paying taxes, you know, part of our role we see is like really informing both employers and refugees to ensure that everybody is familiar with their rights and the regulations that are in place. And so definitely information sharing and making sure that people have access to legal support. As part of our employment programming, for example, we link people to legal service providers who can help provide specific support on issues that people are dealing with that IRC is not necessarily best suited to do. And so that's something that I think that we would continue to explore as the formal economy becomes more of an option for this business process outsourcing work.
Yeah, I totally understand if there's an employer in the mix here, they probably have those processes and procedures down. I was thinking more about this budding opportunity of creating content in Udemy and selling that online, and there's a revenue stream. And you know, I don't know how large those revenue streams are, but ultimately there might be some tax or regulatory implications there. Has there been some thought around that?
Yeah, so from the Udemy side, definitely, I mean, typically when we're paying instructors, there are, in our usual flow, there would be sort of payment processing fees and taxes coming out. But for the purposes of this project, again, we're going through Western Union's quick cash flow, so it's a bit different. But absolutely, I mean, in terms of even localizing currencies, it's certainly a consideration, regulatory issues that we've come across but have been following in terms of our global expansion.
You started talking about 65% of people in primary school today having jobs that don't even exist yet. So we're probably also dealing with regulatory issues or ways the economy will deal with these kind of self-employment, self-expression over time as well. So probably a lot of interesting dynamics in terms of fitting this into the larger picture over time. With that, I think we need to wrap things up. We're at after the top of the hour. Thank you very much, Rachel and Kim, Jody, and also Leila for putting all these webinars together. This has been very, very informative, and we'll send out updates to everyone, a follow-up later on today. So thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.